Hello, everyone, and welcome to What You Need to Leverage Gen AI. This is a super important topic that is on everyone's minds, and it's great to have you here today. This webinar is sponsored by DoiT and produced by Actual Tech Media. I am Keith Ward with Actual Tech Media, and I am thrilled to be your moderator for today's webinar. But before we go there, there's a couple of housekeeping items I need to tell you about to help you get the most out of this session. First up, we encourage your questions in the questions box in your webinar control panel. That's right over there on your right. That Q&A panel is also the place to let us know about any technical issues you might be experiencing, as well as where you are today. Let us know where you're logging in from. I am in North Central Maryland, not far from Baltimore, not far from DC, not far from Gettysburg, actually. So kind of in a little triangle here. So where are you logging in from? Now, that Q&A panel is also the place to let us know if you have problems with your audio or video or slides or anything else. Now, if that happens, the first thing you need to do is give your browser a quick refresh and then maybe another one. I have found that it often takes a couple of refreshes to get things working right. If that still doesn't work, let us know in the Q&A and we will hop on it right away and help you out. All right. Second, we have got some great free resources in the handouts section, which is right there next to the questions tab. I'd especially like to call your attention to two DoiT handouts: maximizing your AWS cost savings and how to accelerate Gen AI deployments on AWS. Now, those sound like must-get handouts to me, so get them now while they're hot. Now, there you'll also find a link to the ATM Decisions Group, which is a panel of IT decision makers, much like you, that you can apply to join to participate in more in-depth events and other opportunities. In that handout section, you'll also find a link to the ATM Events Center, which has a calendar of more upcoming events. Check them out and sign up today for anything that looks really good to you, and that's liable to be a lot of things. All right, third, at the end of this webinar event, we're going to be awarding a $250 Amazon gift card to one of you attending right now. Now, you do have to be in attendance during the entire live event to qualify for the prize. The official terms and conditions of that prize drawing can be found in the handouts section that I've been talking about. Scroll to the bottom and you'll find the link with the really super ultra boring details there. And with that, folks, I cannot wait to get to the main event today. It is my pleasure to introduce you to our presenters, who are Eduarda Mota, Senior Cloud Architect with DoiT, and Rupal Bhatt, Cloud Data Architect with DoiT. Rupal is ready to go. She has got the first crack at things today, so I am turning the virtual mic over to you, Rupal.
Thank you, Keith. Let's get started with what you need to know to leverage Gen AI today. I'm happy to have you all on our presentation today. And that's me, Rupal, presenting for you. And I'm Cloud Data Architect with DoiT, based in Toronto, in Canada. I specialize in AWS data, databases, data architect, data analytics, and also MI and machine learning and AI workload. And today I'm here with Eduardo, my colleague, and I'll pass it on to him.
Hello, everyone. My name is Eduardo. I'm a senior cloud data architect here at DoiT. I've been with DoiT for a little bit over a year. I keep saying that, a little bit over a year, but it has actually been a year and a half now. I need to fix my mind on that. Anyway, previous to DoiT, I was a DevOps engineer, a DevOps manager, so I have that compute side of things. I understand it, yes, but right now I'm specializing in data analytics, AI, ML. A lot of fun stuff with Gen AI right now, right, Rupal?
Yep, we enjoy that.
So we get a lot of customers with this question. So that's why we are excited about this presentation. We are going to be doing some really great information, but I'm not going to steal the thunder from Rupal. I'll pass it back to you, Rupal, on the next slides that we are going to be talking about.
Sure. Let's start it with who we are, who is DoiT. So we are a company managing more than 1.7 billion spend, and then we more than 3,000 customers spread all over the world. in 70 plus countries. So the customers are spread all over the world, and so are we. I'm in Toronto, and Eduardo is in Vancouver, and then we have a whole bunch of colleagues spread all over the world in Japan, Indonesia, Europe, of course, in North America, everywhere. So you just name it. Also, we have more than 1,000 cloud certifications. So we're constantly upgrading our skills, doing certifications, and all of us have like multiple certifications. Eduardo has around 10 of them. I have 5, and we have CSAT of, that is customer satisfaction rate of 98.5%. Believe me, it is true. And of course, we are helping our customers with the technical questions, but we're also helping them to save their spend on AWS and other clouds. So we have more than 300 million in savings. That's true too, again. That's a big number. And let Eduardo talk about the GenAI competency we have here.
This was a fun one. So back in December, we started working on this with the GenAI competency with AWS. A lot of us from all over the world, we started to prove to AWS that, hey, we know what we're talking about. We have been working on the space for quite a bit, and we can deliver really great value to our customers. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be sharing some of that expertise today as to how to get started with GenAI, which is going to be awesome. That is great information. But this one was a fun one to have. It was a crunch time. Now we have it. You know that when you're working with DoiT, you're working with a GenAI competency partner.
Absolutely. So today, let me tell you what we're going to do. Start with the data prerequisites for GenAI. Data is the differentiator. The models have data from all over the world, from all over the internet. But what makes it special for you is your own data. And how do you prepare that data? What are the prerequisites for GenAI? We will talk about that. And next, we will talk about formatting needs for GenAI. We'll be talking about the data, but we will be also talking about the formatting of infrastructure and other security stuff also, which will be useful for you when you jump into this GenAI world. And we'll be talking about the foundation resources of GenAI projects as well. And in the foundations, we'll be talking about the infrastructure and how you set that up. Next, we'll be talking about the strategic use of GenAI for maximizing the ROI. And then that's not just about maximizing the ROI, it's reducing the latency and minimizing the cost as well, and then building the high performing model. And we will help you, and we will talk about how we can do that and what are the different strategies that you can do and the best practices for GenAI implementation. And then last, if you have any questions, which I'm sure you'll have many, we will be doing the questions and answer. So let's take away from there. Okay, ideation. So that's where it all starts. It all starts with an idea. And then we go forward from there. So what question should the GenAI model will answer? That is the first question you ask yourself. How would you like GenAI models to work for you? Is it an HR chatbot that you're looking at doing? Well, in that case, you will be requiring your own policy data. Or it is some chatbot you want to do for your customers. In that case, you will be giving the data to the GenAI model, which is required for the customer questions and answers. So I think you get the idea. The data required for answering these questions is the differentiator. That is your own data, and that data, what are the prerequisites for that data? That's what we will be seeing ahead from here. So data prerequisites will look at the data diversity. Now, when you're working with GenAI, when you're working with machine learning, you're looking at structured data, labeled, unlabeled, but it's still structured. And when you're working with GenAI, you can use anything and everything: audio, video, images, PDF, whatever you talk of. So the data diversity is the main thing. However, when it's anything and everything, you have to look at the quality of data. That is, ensures that the files are unique and they're relevant. And then you have to prepare them for GenAI models. And we'll talk about how we can do that. So first of all, we'll start with the lineage. Is where is your data coming from? Is it like access the document, the origin of it, where you're getting it from, and then you curate it and you want to see, label those files where you're putting them, say in S3 buckets, label those buckets as required. And all this data you want to prepare for your GenAI project. Anything you want to add over there, Eduardo?
Well, I mean, it's like we are talking about data, right? So as Rupal was saying before, your data is your differentiator. So it's important with nowadays that you really curate what data you're going to be make available to your LLM or to your model. Models are the same. Like anybody can download a Llama 3 model, anybody has access to a Gemini model or a Cloud Haiku model or a Sonnet model. But it is what data you have collected over the years, what data you have access to today that is going to be differentiator. And having all this data, being able to manage it properly, don't forget any of the stuff that you have learned from data engineering or from any of these big data um, wave that we saw in the past, right? All of that is still valid today. The difference between working with machine learning versus what it was used to be 2 years ago, 3 years ago, is that you had to manipulate the data a lot in order to be able to pass it through a model, teach the model how to use the data, and so forth and so on. You needed to do a lot of different cleaning and a lot of different stuff that is going on. With today, the data that you already have, it's already used. So you don't have to do a lot of cleaning. In fact, when you clean your data, you're removing important pieces of information that may be useful for the model to understand what's going on. And so, for example, just a quick sample. Before, you needed to convert all your text into lowercase, and then parse it through the model, and this will give you better results. Today, if you convert everything to lowercase, then you're losing piece of information about, for example, if in a text a word is uppercase, that means that it has a more meaning, more is you need more attention to it. So you don't wanna remove those pieces of information from your model and the input. So it's important, and that's what I wanted to mention right now, is that um, all of these that we're talking about, the data diversity, data quality, lineage, is to help you manage your data in your S3, in your data warehouse, in Google Cloud Storage. Is simply being able to understand what data you have, because the more data you are gonna store in there, the harder it's gonna be to know what data needs to be updated, what data needs to be removed, what can you make available to your model, and what can be removed. And I'm gonna stress this a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot, because everybody's talking about Gen AI and everybody's talking about, hey, all these different things that you can do with it. But start with that question of like, what is it that you want to do with Gen AI? What is the outcome that you want to get from, and then work backwards. That is the key to be able to get these projects into production. Is to start with the end goal and work backwards into being able to calculate a lot of the ROI, a lot of different things and things that we're talking about right now, right? So I just want to double down on that one. Oh, we can go to the next one. Rupal.
Sure, sure. And here, more prerequisites of data. First of all, classification of the unstructured data. We want to classify your documents based on the sensitivity, because when you're taking all the data, you might end up keeping something that really should not go to the GenAI model. Like, for example, you might take all your Facebook comments, right? And then they are open, everybody can see it. But you want to think twice about taking your emails inside the emails conversations inside the organization, or the Slack conversation. Well, that might be slightly sensitive. So, those are the kind of things you want to be careful about. Also, you want to sanitize the data. So, you have to make sure that there is no PII, personal identification information, in your data. And if it is, you want to remove it or mask it or redact it, whatever is required. Now, this is extremely important depending on where you are in the world and the kind of data that you're dealing with. Like if it is, say, medical information and all, or health information, the kind of data you have might be very much of a private information, and you have to make sure that it is according to the governance and the compliance of the region you are in the which part of world, which country. And also what data you can share and not share. So all the privacy, security, governance, compliance, all these issues you have to take in consideration before you give your data to GenAI models for training, pre-training. So that's one important thing, governance part, you have to keep in mind. and storing the data. So if you're doing a POC or something, you want to store your data, or using your model, you want to store the data in the S3 buckets, say closest to the region where you are training your model. So it's easier, for the accessibility is easier that way. So those are a few things you have to keep in mind. And I just can't really tell you enough about the compliance part of it, the governance and the compliance part. That is extremely important. Would you like to add
And
anything
later
to
on, we're
that?
gonna. I was gonna say, like, later on, we're gonna talk about a little bit more about security and stuff like that.
Yes,
But
we
so
are
keep
going
in
to do
mind
that.
this, right? Right now, it's governance compliance. It's becoming a lot more important. European Union putting a lot of data laws around it, and so that affects a lot of global organizations. Even if you're in the US, where you have customers in the EU, it does affect you. So we're going to talk about a little bit more about that once we get into that observability and security portion of our talk.
Yes, also the kind of data you use, kind of industry you are in is quite important.
Correct. And so we were talking about, like, Rupal was mentioning formatting at the beginning, like the formats. And I just wanted to give you a little bit of a sense as to what we're talking about and why this is important. Because a lot of us, when I started in data, I was like, oh, let's put it in JSON files or CSV files. I can quickly manage this with Python pandas or NumPy and go from there. And it really makes a huge difference. So I wanted to show you here a little bit of a comparison. So if I had JSON files, let's say a terabyte of JSON files, if I were to compress that into Parquet files and compress that, that's only 130 gigabytes. So that's 87% less storage. And we are talking about the cloud, you're paying for that every month, right? And so keep in mind that now you are storing, have a storage of 87% less. Your monthly cost is going to be 87% less, from $23 of hosting those terabytes of JSON files to only $2.99 on average. I mean, we're talking about this is a little bit of approximation. Um, Now, when you're talking about data scan, and this isn't going to be important for GenAI, because GenAI is going to be accessing these data files. Every time that you ask a question, it's going to go and start looking through these files to find the answer. So in one end, if you have JSON files and you're accessing them, you're going to be 1 terabyte. But if you have it in Parquet file, that's 2.51 gigabytes of scanned data. That's 99% less data being scanned, which means that you go from a $5 per query cost to only a cent. That's huge. So when you're having GenAI talking to your documents, having to process all these documents, you're gonna see a huge difference in these. So it is that's why it's important to understand these different components, right? So um, there is JSON files, there is Parquet files, Parquet compressed files, and there is different frameworks that will allow you to manage these effectively in the long term. You have data lakes that will allow you to orchestrate. And this is data lakes pretty much is a combination of what Rupal has talked about in the last 5 minutes. All your governance, your structure of your files in S3 or in cloud storage, all of that needs to come into play into being a data lake. If you do not follow this, what we've been talking about on the governance and keeping an eye on all of this, a data lake becomes a data swamp. And then if it's a data swamp, your Gen AI is going to get stuck giving you, well, very muddy information, basically. So with this format, keep in mind you're doing that. Now, the other thing that is going to see here in the last one is the query runtime. You see here that because he's having to scan in JSON files or in CSV files, you have to scan the entire data set, 1 terabyte. It's going to take you 236 seconds, which is about like what, 4 minutes or so. Uh, so 4 minutes of just getting the answer. And then that's going to translate into GenAI model even having those 4 minutes. Imagine having someone, an end user, waiting for 4 minutes or even longer, a little bit longer, 4 minutes and a half, while the actual model processes the data and gives the answer. And then it gets answered. That's huge, very long time. Your end users are going to be like, forget it. I'm just going to go and search it myself, or I'm going to do something else. And then half an hour later, they completely forgot about why they were interacting with your system. Now you have 6.678 seconds here. So that's a huge difference, 34 times faster to do it with the Parquet compressed files. Now, there is still techniques further that will allow us to make things faster with GenAI, but you can see the difference in your data alone. This will help you downstream in being able to process your queries, in being able to process these questions a lot better. So do not overlook your format. And we're talking about this in text file documents. This can be applied the same way into audio files, video files, images. How you compress those files, how you store them, how do you access them, what metadata you have around them. All of that is that you're trying to access the least amount of files or open the least amount of files to get to the right answer and be able to retrieve that information as fast as possible. And this is a quick comparison that JSON files and Parquet files have a huge difference. And so keep that in mind and don't overlook that in working with GenAI. It's going to make a big difference. All right. Anything to add there, Rupal? I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is extremely important because sometimes when you're using the kind of architecture where you're keeping the context and asking the questions over again, that is when the data, when the smaller size of the file will really make a difference.
And I mean, do you remember we had customer, kind of a very one particular customer that was looking to generate answers in less than a second. We needed to
Yes,
retrieve things
yes.
in less than a second. So we needed to do a lot of fine tuning everywhere. Every single piece that will remove milliseconds out of the response will help us. So at the end, we were able to make it happen. We were able to make it to 900 milliseconds, between 900 milliseconds and a second, which was great. But this was one piece, the data,
Yeah,
how the
and
data
we
is
will
stored
be
to retrieve.
talking more about that as well later on in the
All
best
right.
practices.
I can be talking about data for a long time and formatting. We can get into a lot of other stuff, but let's go ahead. Let's move on to this one. Agent architecture. You want to take it away?
Sure, sure. So with the formatting, with the agent architecture, so there are two things over here we're looking at, right? There is some information that is very specific, right? Like you're asking, say, in an airline kind of a Gen AI chat model you have, and somebody's asking, when is my flight arriving? In that case, you want to know the name of the customer, information about his flight, and also that is very specific information, precision information that you want, compared to something you want to kind of similar. I'm giving you this picture and give me a similar picture, but not a dog, but a cat. Now that is something unstructured and it's also kind of fuzzy. It doesn't really require very specific information. So those are two different kind of architectures we have, like the agent architecture and the RAG architecture, and we will talk more about that.
So I love the example that you gave about the airline. So imagine, so with the agent architecture, you are accessing the data in the database. You're making the query with very specific data information and then retrieving that piece of information. In the case of Rupal, she wants to know at what time is her flight. So you're gonna go search the latest flight and take a look at when the flight is leaving. Now, that is an agent architecture, and you're going to be using in the agent architecture, you're going to be using things like Lambda functions or cloud functions in GCP, very specific. That are going to be the UHAR code, the logic, or the things that it can do. Now, on the RAG architecture, retrieval augmented generation, is you're retrieving information, you're augmenting the prompt, and then you're generating a response. How is that different? Well, with the RAG architecture, you are doing a representation of information. So, for example, you have a paragraph, you have a sentence, you're converting that into numbers. And once you have those numbers, then you can do math with them. And so, what is going to happen is that when you ask a question, that gets converted also into numbers, and then you can compare those two numbers, the numbers of the question that you ask against the numbers of the database, of the information that you have in your database, and then you can compare it. Now, what you can imagine here is that when you're making this math, although it's precise math, the representation of the text is not. How can you represent the cat is black? while I can represent it one way, Rupal probably will represent it a different way, and I will give it a certain number of, I will represent it with certain numbers. Rupal may represent it with different numbers. And both will be correct, but how then you compare them? And that's why it becomes fuzzy. It becomes not precise. Because we continue with the example of like, when is the time of my flight, then with a similarity search is gonna search, and it's gonna retrieve information of the top 5 matches. And hopefully one of them is gonna be the latest flight, but it can be that is going to give us information about the previous 5 flights that Rupal had, and then the LLM is going to choose the time for one of them. And so it's going to probably give the wrong information. Maybe it's going to give the third flight that Rupal took. It's like, okay, yeah, the flight is going to leave at 11 a.m. instead of at 9 a.m. So Rupal is going to miss her flight. So that's not good. So that's why we are going to be doing it. But it's really great, for example, if you have documents or if you have images and you're asking, hey, I want to know how, for example, the company did last year on earnings. And so that's really good because then it's going to retrieve that. You're not being very precise. You're talking about earnings. So the documents that you have will be talking about earnings, EBITDA, like revenue, all those type of things. So it's going to retrieve all that information and it's going to get processed through the language model. So there is a difference between these two. And so that we just want to mention that you do not have to do one and not the other. You can do both at the same time if you want to, right? You can expose both to the model. And it becomes really powerful because then Rupal can be like, hey, I want to know what time is my flight and I want to know what time I arrive. Oh, and by the way, can you also suggest things that I can do in the place that I'm arriving? So the first two, at what time I'm leaving and at what time I arrive in, they are very precise, particular to Drupal, particular event. So then it's going to retrieve that with an agent architecture. Then what things can she do while she is down there in the destination? That can be in the rack architecture where it's looking for activities that other people have done in the past. Maybe in your retrieval, you are adding some demographics like uh, the age, the country of origin, the country of destination, what type of things Rupa like to do, all of those things, and then being able to retrieve information that is relevant for her, right? So um, I hope that with this example, you're able to understand a little bit more the difference between that. And why are we mentioning all of this is because your data is going to be different from one versus the other. In your precision, in your early architecture, you can leverage the data that is as is that you have today. You just need to be able to retrieve it, be able to way to retrieve it. Versus in a similarity or in a rack architecture, you need to convert this data into numeric representation. And that was where we're talking about that numeric representation and then store it into what we call a vector database. And what we call it a vector is just a list and a list of numbers, right? And those numbers represent that text that you are wanting to represent. So you can use Postgres, you can Elasticsearch, you can OpenSearch, vector search in GCP. There are many different vector databases that will allow you to retrieve data faster. But it's basically that, a representation of numbers and then being able to connect it with what question you are asking, with what task you're asking. So the possibilities are endless. What it becomes with your data, how you are storing that data. So you can see we're starting to move a little bit more into, okay, that data. Now we're going to start talking about how this is starting getting connected with GenAI. All right. I can keep like, oh man,
I
I
know,
like it. Sorry.
and
I
this
like
is
it. It's just like,
like
it gets so exciting.
yeah, and the GenAI models are probabilistic. So this time, when I ask, it will give me 5 different things that I would like to do in the place where I arrive. But then, if I ask the same question again, it will give me 5 different things.
Exactly. But and then so RAG architecture helps you a little bit with that, right? Because it's a math function. So you're gonna get the top 5 searches back. Then you pass it to the LLM, which then will help it kind of like ground it. So that's what I call grounding is with LLMs, is because now if you ask the question again, the possibilities are a lot higher that it's gonna give you the same answer because it's retrieving the same information. And so it helps with that grounding. Now the wording will change slightly because it's like you were mentioning, Rupal, probabilistic. So the words that it chooses to give you that information will change, but the idea and the main content will be the same. All right, we can keep going. And we have time. We need to keep giving them information about what's going
Yes.
about this process.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Foundational resource for GenAI. So, sorry, Rupal, you were mentioning um, data. We've been talking about data.
First
You
thing.
come from the data world in the back, like before GenAI and ML. First thing.
Hmm. Yep.
Yeah, so I want to ask you something here. So we have structured data. We have images, audio, video, tweets, policies, manuals. So what can you say will be an example of a structured data?
For structured data, let's take again the example of our airline, right? So we'll have the structured different tables, like for example, say MySQL table maybe, or Postgre or something. But those are the databases that we are using over there to keep the information about the customers or the flyers, and then information about the flights will be in different table, but these are structured. They have id, the primary key, foreign key, and everything, you're matching and all that. So that is totally structured. You have the length of the field, how many fields, schemas, databases, everything. So structured is predefined there.
Okay, yeah. So that's all the databases that we've been talking about. And so you have a
Mhm.
structure, you have images, audio, video, tweets. So it can be anything. Like at this point, like data, we we're talking about is your data lake. You have good management of there. Fantastic. Now we move into infrastructure. Infrastructure, GenAI models. Um, Although you can run some models in your local laptop, those are small models. That's called like the term is small, large models, if that makes sense. It's large because it's larger than what we were talking about before, like we've been working with in previous years. But it's small compared to like a Llama 370B with 70 billion parameters is huge. It requires a lot of memory that wouldn't fit in a laptop. But then there is ways to be able to compress them. Anyway, I'm diverting. Hardware, you get your GPUs and CPUs. Um, and I just want to touch base on why, first of all, why you need a GPU. And if you need a GPU, then how can you run on a CPU? Do you want to give us some insight into that, Rupal? And then I can enhance a little bit at the end.
Oh yeah. So like when you're when you're inferencing the data, when the model is prepared and everything, you don't need so much of the compute. But when you are training the data, that is when you need more compute, when you need much higher requirement of computes and much bigger machines and parallelizations as well. So that's where the big difference comes in. And then that's where you have to decide as to you want to go with the GPUs or the CPUs, depending on how much data you're feeding to your GenAI models, and how much data you want to train.
Absolutely. So we are going to talk about two things. One, train is how much you're training. So if you take a look at CPUs, definitely you can train certain small models in CPU. They're going to take a little bit of time, quite a bit of time, but you can do it. Not very effective, and that's why you come into GPUs. Like a lot more efficient. I mean, still very costly. If you wanna create a large language model from scratch, you're talking about $3-4 million in GPU and like 2 to 3 months to be able to train these models in very large amounts of data. But even if you are gonna fine tune them, even if you're gonna run them for inference, GPUs a lot more efficient. You can definitely do that. You can run them. It's gonna be really good for inference. CPUs can adjust a large language model to run on a CPU. What you are going to gain in cost reduction, so you're going to reduce your cost by running a CPU versus a GPU, you're going to gain in latency. So running a large language model on CPU is going to be very slow compared to a GPU. So that's a trade-off in there. Now I'm going to try a third one. which is proprietary to certain cloud providers. So AWS has Inferentia too, which is a chip that is for deep learning models and large language models. Really good performance, cheap because it's custom made for AWS. The same can go with Google Cloud. They have TPUs. Same idea, different architecture, different technology in the backend, but same idea. Higher inference throughput and lower cost. So I'm gonna give you with that GPUs, CPUs. Most of us, when we are starting with a POC, when we start getting going, we're gonna be using GPUs, but also we're gonna be using managed services like Bedrock in AWS or Vertex AI Studio or Gemini in GCP. So we don't have to worry about a lot of the infrastructure, but it's just good to know what's going on in backend. Now you have your software and platform and a scale warfare. So for example, software and platform is these services that I was talking about, AWS Bedrock, managed service. You can connect, you can use the GenAI as an API, and you don't have to worry about if it's running on GPU, if it's running on CPU, you're just worrying about that latency as an in your API. The same goes with GCP Vertex AI Studio. You're using you're using the GenAI models as an API. So all of that, um, you have these managed services, which are great. You don't have to worry too much about infrastructure, but you do need some skill workforce, knowing how this works, how the Gen AI models work, what some of the parameters mean in order for you to be able to look at what you're looking for, right? So those are stuff that someone needs to know. Some of the latency. How can you reduce latency? We talk about that in data. How can you reduce latency of the model generating the answer? So some skill workforce to be able to increase that. And now we have observability and security, right? We start talking about data quality. Fantastic. But now that you're integrating with the model, you're talking about model evaluation. How good is that answer coming through? And GenAI can do certain can resolve for some classical problems like classification. So I have 1,000 documents. I want to classify them into X, Y, and Z. GenAI can do very good job, and then you can do a calculation into how many documents were uh, classified correctly versus incorrectly. That's kind of like a classic model. There are a lot of smaller models that can do that as well. So GenAI, what the benefit is that you are able to do this easily without the manipulation of data. Remember what I'm talking about? In order to use older models like non-Gen AI models, you need to do cleaning of the data, manipulation of the data to be able to get them into a good state. With Gen AI, you don't have to do that. So a lot of people still use Gen AI for this classical task because there is faster to do the data preparation. But you can do that calculation. But what happens if I ask a question like, "Hey, what can I do when I arrive at my destination?" Like in RuPaul's case, how can I evaluate the quality of that? And so there are metrics that try to evaluate that, like Rogue or Blue, that try to evaluate the diversity of the words, how close they are related to the question, and things like that. They are not bulletproof things that you can say, oh, yeah, that's what we're going to use and it's going to be 100% accurate, but it will give you a good sense as to what's going on. And it's better when you compare these within your workload against questions that you like, answers that you like. So maybe you in your testing, you ask certain questions and you're like, you know what, that's a really good answer. You save that answer, you calculate this metric row blue, and then you can compare it to uh, answers later on. That will give you a better sense as to where you are versus, hey, somebody else did the test. I have these numbers and I'm going to compare it to them. It's not going to give you a really good indication as to how good your model is. It's going to give you misleading information, those numbers. Now, on the prompt evaluation is how well are your prompts? How can you improve the prompts? And we have seen it, prompt engineering. I like to call it better prompt design because you're designing the prompt, you're putting how well that prompt is to get you to the output. We're not gonna get too much into that right now, into what it looks like. That's a whole other topic on its own. But evaluate those prompts as well, similar to how you will evaluate the model output, um, and be able to have a set of golden prompts with golden answers. And then those are going to be your benchmark that you're going to be able to use, not only for making sure that your model performs correctly, but also are there things that it shouldn't be saying? Are there words that you don't like? Are there things that, hey, you know what? This should not be something that a model should be answering. So you could be able to avoid that. Anything to add there, Rupal?
The prompt evaluation part is extremely important. Prompt designing is more like an art within the science. There are like you could be really good at it to get the right answer from the model, and you could mess it up and you'll get a whole sort of hallucination and weird answers. So that's one important one. Another thing I wanted to add, Eduardo, is about the infrastructure. We talked about the bedrock, and then that is a managed service. But with AWS, as I know, you if you want to manage your own infrastructure, go ahead and do it. That's possible too.
Absolutely right. So with AWS, you can do that. You have GPUs available. You have inferential to available. GCP, you have the same thing. You have GPUs available, have TPUs available. Tip: Bedrock, you can deploy your own. You can deploy a lot of models using SageMaker. Um, uh, wow,
Jumpstart.
Jumpstart. Thank you, Rubala. I had the image and I was trying to read it. Anyway, SageMaker Jumpstart. Thank you. And in GCP, you have a model garden. So keeping that in mind, and you can test that very quick. They make it very easy for you to deploy things in your own infrastructure. All right, let's move on. Um, so we are talking about all of these, and so one of the biggest questions that we get asked, or that we have identified when we're working with projects, is this ROI. How can we start leveraging ROI? I had a customer who put the workload to place. Everything was going great. It gave the great output. They were calculating that we're going to generate $1 million in new revenue, and then they find out that it will cost them $1 million to run the GenAI workload. So it was a net zero at the end. So when you say, hey, $1 million in net revenue, that's awesome. But then what is the cost of that? So that's why it's important also when you are preparing for GenAI, what is your ROI? What is going to look like? And how can you start thinking about it, right? So in the case of GenAI, it's like, it's going to be a new product. Is it going to be a completely new line? A new product that you're going to be leveraging. And so, for example, some financial institutions are leveraging this kind of like automating advising as a new product that you can pay for. Or is it going to be a new product feature? Some other financial institutions are just including as part of what you pay monthly in your checking or banking account. It can be like, for example, in retail, just a personal advisor that tells you, hey, you look great on that one. So that can be a Gen AI product, right? That is just kind of like a video chatbot that is talking to you on the website that tells you, hey, you may like this, you may like that product. So you see that, and that will enhance your customer satisfaction or enhancing your customer experience like a chatbot. It's going to help you. We were talking about with Rupal about the airline, fantastic. Fantastic service where you can chat with somebody and get the answer right away instead of waiting for somebody. It's very quick and it gets a really sense of like it understand what you're talking about rather than these all chatbots where you had to be very precise, and if you change the word, it won't understand what you're talking about. And it was only very specific things that you needed to ask. Nowadays, it can be more broad. We have done restaurant menu like orders, so someone can order something, substitute things, be very like particular. Hey, I'm a vegan, I want to order only this, and it really works really great. It's a great experience. And then finally, improve operational efficiency. It doesn't have to be external, doesn't have to be something that you have with the end users. It can be internal as well, right? So to think about development help. Someone like with your developers, you can help them code faster. It can be that it help you with internal processes. I used to work with fintech, so sometimes it can be around fraud. How can you detect fraud faster, or how can you process special requests faster. So those type of things, it can help you a lot in these use cases. And then you're looking at how does that translate into monetization, right? Are you being in a product differentiator? Is that put you in a differentiator from from other competitors? Are you going to be able to gain a market advantage? Are you looking to gain 20% more market? Are you looking to gain 5% more market, 20% more customers? Paid feature. Are you actually gonna get customers to pay for this new feature because hey, you know what? It's a premium feature. Like, look, it's gonna help you X, Y, or Z. It's gonna reduce your cost, and that's gonna be a value for your customers. So that is gonna be how you're gonna get some revenue back. And then improve customer loyalty. Maybe all of this is great, but you know what? I'm just gonna throw it out there. I'm gonna throw the feature because this is gonna create customer loyalty, and they are gonna be coming back more and more often, and that's just gonna be good business. Or lower cost of operation. Doesn't necessarily need to be increased revenue. You can also uh, decrease expenses, right? So faster development means that you are able to be more efficient, reduce cost, and be able to have ultimately net revenue. All right. So just some ideas, but it's important that you start thinking about this from the beginning. All right. So we're talking about cost. These are some examples that I just want to share with you just to give you an idea how much things cost. Okay. So let's take a look about summarization of 1,000 documents with the images. So let's talk about 20% of images in this example on the math that I did. Only $2.67, and then you can really have something useful for summarization. Maybe it's a HR chatbot internally so that your internal employees can ask questions about HR policy. Hey, help you. So $2.67, you can compare that into what value it's going to bring you, how much it's going to cost you to not have this. So now I'm going to leave the middle one for a moment because I'm going to explain something in there. But now let's go generation of 3,000 images. So maybe you're in retail, you want to generate new images, or you want to make modifications to images. $9.29 on these of generation of new images. Now this includes some of the cost of storage. So keep that in mind. I'm trying to include costs on not only of the GenAI model, but so for example, on some compute instances or traffic, data transfer from one place to another, things like that. It's already included in this. So you can get a sense into, hey, you know what? Processing of documents is not that expensive. Generation of images is not that expensive. But let's talk about the middle one. Audio. Audio is expensive. That conversion of audio, like the audio to text, is expensive. And that is what's driving most of the cost here of 1,000 audio files or 60 minutes. It's not so much the Gen AI portion of it, you know. It's the conversion, the transcription of audio into text. That what generates probably about $1,400 of this, and only $45 is actual summarization of the workload, right? So uh, keep that in mind. Not every single file is different, so that's why it's important. Imagine if you had audio files and you were going to transcribe them. Uh, if you have to do this over and over again, it will cost you more. So think about the process in which you need to transcribe them once, and then you can reuse those files multiple times. Then your ROI is going to start increasing, start making a lot more sense. But just to give you an idea of some of the costs of doing this. So that's why a lot of people are starting with text summarization. It's cheap, it's easy. You can go ahead and start playing with it a little bit more. Now, I'm not talking right now. I'm not talking about um, agent or rack architecture. Those will increase a little bit more because of the cost of the databases, but overall will be good. All right. Now, this is one of the last slides. I just want to make sure that we bring all of this together. We've been talking about all of this. Precise data, lower your latency latency, lower your costs, then that's going to translate into a more precise inputs. So you're paying for how many text you're sending to the model. You want to make that concise in a good length that will give you the output that you are. So you're doing that math. The least amount of text that you send to get the best answer out. So that's a balance in there. That's why we start with data, the quality of the data, then your prompt, how efficient is prompt, and then your model performance and infrastructure that we were talking about, latency with services like Bedrock or Gemini, um, and then being able to the quality of the output. The pricing that I was showing you includes all of these: data storage, traffic, input tokens, output tokens, the models. Okay. And choosing the model. So Gemini, fantastic model in GCP. Unfortunately, that is the only model available as a managed service. You can use Model Garden for a lot of other models like Claude. In Amazon, you have Bedrock with a lot of models in there. Claude, Haiku, my favorite one right now because it's cheap, it's fast, it's efficient, it's really good. We also have like Claude Sonnet. You have other models in there. So I'll let you choose, but keep in mind data, prompt, model latency, then model output. All right. Anything to add, Rupal? All right. Okay. So what happens when we get to best practices? You know that we're coming to the end. So start with creating a POC, playing with it. You have Bedrock. You see how cheap things are. You start playing with Bedrock. Bedrock, what I like is also it will tell you how much it costing you every time that you interact with it. So you don't have to wait until the end of the month or till the end of the next day to be able to see how much you're paying for it. It will tell you how much. Cloud Haiku, Bedrock, fantastic one, cheap, will allow you to do that. You also have stable diffusion models to be able to do image generation. GCP, you have Gemini in the Vertex AI Studio, fantastic tool. Play with it. Both of these services, AWS and GCP, will allow you to play with your own documents. They are not meant for larger scale, not for production, but allow you to start getting a sense of what you can do with it. So play with it. So create a POC, get 10 people to start testing this, start getting feedback, and so you can start seeing what the cost, what the latency is of different things. Okay. Um, and monitor. Start with that practice. I know observability. I come from the DevOps world. I come from the SRE world. We talk about observability, and it's hard to do. But start taking a look at how much things are costing, how much, what is the latency that you're getting. Just start keeping an eye on that. Start making notes. Start keeping a sense of what's going on there, so that when you start running into a larger POC, into a larger production, you start being able to compare. Okay. And seek advice from the community. There is a lot of people right now invested in that. Seek advice from the community. Um, Rupal and I, we have these conversations on a daily basis with different customers on how they can. And we have conversations from, hey, when I use GenAI, I don't know how to start. To, hey, I'm running this in production. How can I make it better? How can I improve to be able to get this answer? All these different things. So ask, raise your hand, and go from there. So have fantastic time with these POCs and gather user feedback. Use iterate, get feedback, iterate, make changes, and go from there. Any last advice, Rupal?
Yes, the POC part is the proof of concept. We just start small. Just take a small case that you would like to do, like just a chat or just summarization. As Eduardo said, that's one of the favorite thing for people to start with, and just start with it and start small. Just see how it works. Monitor and see how the monitoring works. CloudWatch and other monitoring tools that you can use. And then once you get hang of it, make it slightly bigger, and then soon enough you'll be on the production level.
And to be honest, for me, even I use Bedrock and Gemini on my day to day, just asking questions. Maybe I'm learning something about new. Like right now, I'm learning Rust, so I ask a lot of questions about Rust, the programming language, and just help me. It's not about it giving me the answer; it's allowing me just to think differently, and that's one of the key things that you can start getting out right now. Just start playing with it to see how everything works. All right, so I can't keep talking about this all day if you want to, but I know everybody has other things to do besides listening to Eduardo talk about it and Rupal. So we are excited. I know there has been a lot of questions coming through. I know everybody is like at the edge of their seat, just waiting. But we have a kid. He is going to help us with these questions, and we're going to be able to answer some of them. We're not be able to get to all of them, but we're going to be able to answer some of them.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much for that amazing presentation, Eduardo and Rupal. It was it's so informative. Everyone has questions about this right now. It's on everyone's mind, and everybody's trying to figure it out. You know, it's a complex field, and unfortunately, your presentation was so stuffed with good things that we have mostly run out of time. But there is one question that I think that's on everybody's mind, especially after that presentation, that I do want to get out here before we have to close this out. But first, I want to mention that all questions that do not get answered today during this live event will be followed up on by DoiT. So have no fear. If you ask a question and you didn't get it answered, you will be hearing from them. So don't worry about that. But what I'm sure everyone is thinking about right now is, well, I want to take that next step. What you have shown me has been so intriguing. I need to get involved with this. So I want to get involved with DoiT. What are the next steps that I should take? What would you tell those folks?
Go ahead, Eduardo.
All right, sorry, I said double mute there. Anyway, duet.com. You can go to duet.com. You can reach out. You can reach out. You can reach out to Rupal or myself on LinkedIn. You can search for us there. But duet.com. It's a fantastic uh, resource that you'll be able to reach out to us, have a lot of conversation. There is a lot of material out there. In AWS, you have Skill Boost. In GCP, you also have something similar. But there is a ton of information. What we do and what we help you is get what you need. Remove all the noise, get what you need, get you going, get you started. We have different projects, different things that we can help you with it. But that's what we do. That's what Rupal and I do. We teach you how to fish. And that's kind of like our holiday. Enhance your skills. We are here to transfer knowledge. We spend tons and tons of time learning, reading, watching videos and practicing so that we can give you the still version of all of this and you can get you going a lot faster. So doit.com, that's where you will find and be able to reach out to us.
Fantastic. Thank you. Rupal, anything to add onto Eduardo's comprehensive checklist of how to get started?
Absolutely. We work with a lot of customers. They are in different industries. So we do have experience with working with different industries as well. So whatever industry you're working in, whatever regulations you have to work with, whatever country you are in, as I said, we are an international company too. We can work with you and we can get you started. So that proof of concept, the POC, if you want to start, we are here to help.
Fantastic. Well, I want to thank you both for being on with us, for updating us on what DoiT is doing in this industry. It's such an innovative company, always on the leading edge. So I want to thank you again for your time and for that amazing presentation.
Thank you so much, Kate. Thank you, everyone. Have a fantastic one.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Okay, everyone. That was just amazing, wasn't it? Boy, did I learn a ton. And that's why I love being on these things as much as you attendees do. I just got such a great overview of generative AI and what DoiT is doing in that regard. Fantastic learning here from me. I feel like I'm in school, but the kind of school that you don't mind going to. So I hope everyone had the same experience. Just great stuff again. Really appreciate Rupal and Eduardo being here with us today. Now, before we wrap up, though, folks, we have one more piece of business to take care of before I cut you loose, and that is to give away the $250 Amazon gift card. And the winner of the gift card for this event is Robert McDaniel from Texas. Congratulations to you, Robert. We are going to be in touch with you ASAP to get you your card. And with that, folks, we are wrapped. On behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank DoiT for making this event possible. And thanks to you attendees, as always, for being here today, for the great questions that you asked. I love to see that kind of curiosity in the audience, and you guys certainly had that today. Can't wait to see you in the next event, everyone. That concludes this event, as a matter of fact. Have a great rest of your day.